Welcome back to the Muzzle Blast Podcast, the official podcast of the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association. This show is made possible by the members of the NMLRA. Thank you.
My name is Eric Ewing. I'm from Red Hook, New York, in the Hudson Valley area, and I am a contemporary artist making mostly leather bags, textile bags in my own style.
And we kind of came across each other some on Instagram through the NMLRA back and forth. I've got your page pulled up here, and your bags are really, I guess the term I would use is kind of homespun that I've heard before.
A lot of them I have that look, yeah. I try to kind of stay out of just one style bag, but a lot of the bags I make, it's just kind of style that is homespun. Using a lot of homemade stuff with that look of like somebody kind of made it at home out of materials they had or, ran over.
Yeah. So what got you started in the kind of the traditional craft side of things? Have you always been interested in history and leatherworking?
I've always been interested in history. It was mostly, my mom was really into it. And since we were little kids, she always took us to historical sites, and we watched a lot of old black and white classic movies at home. We were always somehow learning something. She's kind of one of those people with like a million facts,
Okay, yeah.
That I'm kind of like that too, where, billion things about that are kind of like minutia about nothing. A lot of historical stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I got a lot of my interest in history. I've always been an artist. I went to the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. I went to art school. I really was kind of aimless with my art. I really never had I went there for fine arts. Not everybody in fine arts becomes a famous artist, obviously. You kind of, a lot of people are directionless in it, and you're just trying to figure out what it is you do. I never really quite did. And at some point, when I moved upstate out of New York City, I started with hunting and shooting. It was a way to kind of wed those three things together: history, art, and the outdoors. One day, I got my first flintlock rifle, and I needed a bag, obviously. I started trying to figure out, all right, let me see what I can do for a bag. I looked online, and there was commercially made shot bags available by different people, and I was like, they're really kind of dumb looking. And I started looking at historical ones, and I was like, oh, those are cool. And I discovered the Contemporary Makers blog.
Oh yeah.
And that kind of did it for me. I was like, all right, let me make a bag. And I made my first bag, which was just like a fold over bag that it's the one that everybody has made probably at some point. It's a bag that Wallace Gustler, who's a famous collector from Virginia, has in his collection, and everybody calls it the early Virginia bag. I kind of was like, I did the same thing. I was like, this is my copy of the early Virginia bag. I used it, and that was my first bag. And that was since then I probably made about 200 or so other bags and leather things that are, in that same discipline.
So how early after art school did you do your replication of the Wallace Gustler early Virginia bag?
No, at least 10 years. I graduated in 2002 from art school. I did a lot of other oddball jobs since then, and I kind of gave up art. I did some painting every now and then. I always kind of did a little something, but I never really found any way to pursue it. And of course I had children, and kind of was busy raising them when they were really little, and they're still pretty little. It wasn't until about probably, I'm going to say 2013 that I actually made that bag. Maybe a little bit earlier, I'm not really sure. So I haven't really been doing it all that long.
Well, you couldn't tell by looking at it, looking at your work.
Well, thank you, yeah. That's weird. A lot of people, I'm 38 years old, or excuse me, actually I'm 39, and it's funny because I get a lot of people who make this stuff are retired. They're kind of, their 60s and 70s, and they're kind of at least at first, they were kind of shocked about, that I was that age. I had already kind of thought of myself as kind of old at that point. I was like, I'm almost 40. I'm an old man now.
Right.
And then it was kind of funny that people being like, what? You're in your 30s? Yeah, I thought I was done pretty much.
And all of a sudden you've got a whole, other half of your career coming up.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So that's kind of how it happened. I was like, all right. And since I've become a really kind of, I guess, what I was meant to do art-wise, at least for now.
Yeah.
One of the things that, I'm the kind of person, I'm really not, I have other certain things in life that I am disciplined about, but when it comes to art, the concepts I'm not very disciplined about. In other words, I will kind of pursue any direction I want to.
Right.
When it comes to the materials and the execution, I try to stay as disciplined as possible. But when it comes to like the concept and thinking up of, letting the creativity go where it needs to go, I try not to be rigid at all.
Right.
That was kind of my fine arts thing too. I was never like the kind of person to sit there and study, how to draw a hand perfectly or something. I kind of was a little bit undisciplined in general. And it's taken decades to become more disciplined, but I kind of like, that aspect that I can kind of go anywhere I want to with my work and not feel like I'm boxed in. I don't make a lot of work that copies any particular historic direction.
Yeah.
I don't make a lot of work for reenactor or living historians very often. I did at first. I kind of was like concerned about it, but the more I looked into, the more I studied surviving antique bags, the more I realized like we really know almost nothing about them. It's such a it's such a really unknown thing because it's a small thing. It's a bag, a shoulder bag. It's not really a key component of people's material, equipment from back then. And
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but it's not like, it's like people, you can tell like they know everything there is to know about the brown death musket, for example.
Yeah.
They can tell you what factory.
But that was a really pivotal piece.
Right. Whereas like a shooting bag is kind of like, they're really, there's no catalog that survives showing them from back then. You know what I mean? There's very few of them that are proven to be 18th century that exist, that are still in existence today. So the more I kind of looked into it, the more I realized, well, there really isn't a whole lot of information about these. And what kind of like blew my mind too is I was talking to someone, and I'm not going to say their name, but they told me that they were one of the people that helped Madison Grant, the author and collector who kind of well known during the later 20th century. He made the book, the Kentucky Rifle Hunting Pouch book.
Okay.
If you started making bags, that's kind of like almost like a Bible of sorts for you. You're like,
oh yeah.
Wow, flipping through every page. You're kind of blown away by how cool it is. And I met someone who says that, this is what he told me, was that he was one of the people that was kind of on the staff that Madison kind of put together to make the book. And he had them all repair all these antique bags, and they attached the horns, they attached knives, powder measures, they did all kinds of repairs to them. And that kind of blew my mind. I was like, well, so, how much of this stuff is original, on these bags? You have no idea.
Right.
And even if that's not true, there's really no way to know that somebody didn't attach. If you see an antique bag anywhere and there's like, you look at it, you're like, well, it's got a knife attached to it, a horn, somebody could have put that on at any point,
Yeah.
During its collection, during its ownership. So I kind of started to realize, well, we don't really know anything. There's no reason to like try to categorize all these things. And the more I kind of realized that, the more relaxed I got, and the better my own work got.
Would you say it was kind of freeing then?
Exactly. I was like, you know what? I don't really care if this is a historically accurate thing at this point. I just want it to look the way it would look if I wanted it,
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it has gone.
So
it's kind of like, it was like a breakthrough.
Yeah. With that in mind, your bags to me look very period, but you say you're not.
Well, I do.
You're not replicating anything. You're still looking at, historic examples when you can. I guess looking at your work, I wouldn't assume that that's how you felt about, what we know about traditional bags.
Well, I do. I don't want to say that, I don't want to misrepresent that. I do study a lot of bags.
Okay. I
have studied a lot of them. I seek them out. I collect some of them. I try not to collect too many antique bags anymore because, I kind of realize I'm spending money on like decaying leather.
Yeah.
But I do, it seems like, wow, this is not a good investment, So I stopped buying them mostly, but I do study a lot of them. I seek them out wherever I see them. People send me, because I kind of, I guess a lot of people know my work, so a lot of people send me pictures of bags, or they seek me out at different shows and will bring them, just like they do for a lot of other people. I'm not an expert by any means, but I do get approached by a lot of people with bags, and I do try to study them as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I try to incorporate all the elements that I see on them in my own work. So even something that you see that might be a little bit crazy, like an animal face or some kind of inlay that seems like, oh, come on, that's weird. I usually, most of the time, I've seen that on an antique bag. And even the repairs, like I try to copy some of the repairs I've seen that, that repair might be 20 years old. That repair might be new. That repair might be 100 years old. I try to incorporate the repairs and the damage that I see on them if I'm trying to make something look a little bit older.
Yeah.
So I try to do that. I try to make things up. In other words, I try to make it look like it fits in kind of in a time period because at the end of the day, they are collected mostly by, people who appreciate history and, are going to use them or at least pair them with, a flintlock rifle. So they do have to fit the part. They can't be, completely anachronistic.
Right. That's very interesting. And these are high quality bags. I mean, you're not going to the CLA show with boxes and boxes of these, I assume.
No. In fact, it's getting harder and harder to have stuff for the CLA show. My first year I did the show, I probably had like 20 bags with me. And I made this big display and they were all hanging up and they were like wind chimes hanging above my head at the show. And I was like, I couldn't see people on the other side of them. And then the next year there was less. And, I kind of was like, one of the bag makers I've always admired is this guy, Joe Mills, who we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And the first year I went to the show, I sought him out and I went to his table and he had a box on his table, like a wooden box. And that was it, just a wooden box. And I was like, oh my God, he's got nothing, I was expecting like a display of like his all the bags that he's made that I've like, been amazed by. He had a box. That was it. And inside the box was a few bags he was working on or antique bags he was repairing. And, I was kind of like, wow, he doesn't have to have anything. And, he just goes there and it's like, it's not about selling bags for him. He just goes there for the experience of the show. And he's kind of almost like a part of the show.
Yeah.
And I noticed, another artist I've always really admired he's been like a mentor also for me is Ian Pratt.
Okay.
And his wife, Mary Ellen. And I always noticed like, they would have like, maybe he'd have one gun on a table and two of her bags that were, maybe they were already sold. Or maybe sometimes Ian might not even have a gun there. Maybe he would have a gun he was working on there. I was like, wow, these people, they don't go there. They're not vendors. They're artists.
Yeah.
They're part of the show. Ian, he'd be standing in front of the table at the Dixie Gun Makers Fair. He wouldn't have a real table. He'd bring a small card table where Mary Ellen would sit, doing something, just hanging out with their dog. Their dog would be there. And he would bring like a gunmaker's vise standing up that he built just for the show. And he'd be there like kind of mindlessly shaping the buttstock of the rifle, just to have something to do really, and it's kind of
right.
like, it was kind of like, he was part of the show more than like a vendor hawking his wares. And that kind of made an impression on me too. And I've since tried to like make my display at the show like just a couple of bags, on a few different boards or, rather than laid out on the table, I try to put them on something to get them off the table, so they're more visible. But yeah, I guess what you were kind of saying is that, they take a long time to make.
Yeah.
They take a lot of work. So I don't make too many of them. Not like I used to. I'm not really all that prolific as I used to be. I can't really crank them out. But they take a long time to make. The materials take time to source and to work with. And I spend a lot of time conceptualizing them. That's kind of a big part of what I do is mostly like the actual making of the bag is like nothing compared to the amount of time I spend thinking about them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense?
Yeah. Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. So when you're,
And it might not be,
when you're talking about conceptualizing it, you know, what's that process look like? Are you sitting down with a sketchbook and, you know, some pencils, some watercolors, or is it research? What's that look like?
it's really kind of all of that. You know, a lot of it is like any idea. Some of it comes to you while you're like in the shower or walking to the supermarket or something. You know,
Yeah.
like, oh yeah. Or I see a picture of sometimes I see a picture of like a modern bag. You know what I mean? Like a luggage or something, or a modern like a upland hunting bag or something. And I'm like, you know, some element of it catches my attention, like the way the flap sits on it, or the way the trim is, or the shape of it. And I start to think a little bit, and then well, where did they get that from? You know, where's that idea from? And then I start to look at older bags to see if there's some trace of it somewhere. Or I might see a picture of an antique bag I really like, and I say, oh man, I really want to make not a copy of that, but something that has what I like about it in it. And then, so I get this kind of like spark of an idea, and I kind of like sit on it for a while. I don't act on it right away. I kind of keep a sketchbook with me almost all the time, just in case I feel like it. Like there's always one, like in, you know, wherever, you know, where the chair I'm sitting in, my chair that I sit in, whether it's the one I, you know, work at or, watch TV, and I always keep like a sketchbook near it. And I do a lot of sketching. I don't, you know, I'll sketch it from different angles. I sketch the ideas. I might kick an idea off a good friend of mine, you know, and show it to him. What do you think? What do you think about this idea? We do that back and forth. And then what I'll start to do is I'll start to look at the materials that I have, and I kind of like, I lay them out, mess with them, kind of fold them, put them together. It's just, you know, I start to like, all right, like do math equations. Like, all right, if I do this textile and I mess with it like this, what do I have to do to the leather nets to make it look the way I want? Or, you know, or what can I do to this leather to make it not look like the leather it's starting out as without ruining it, you know?
Yeah.
And I start to kick around the logistics of it. And then I stop and I go do something else and forget all about it for a week and then come back to it. And it really takes like if you see a bag that I make and you're like, I really like that, it probably has been like picked up and started and put down, and even just the idea of it has been picked up and put down over like a 6-month period.
Okay.
And
that
then
seems...
I finally like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that seems very, you know, free flowing, so to speak. You know, I think the craftsmen I've talked to, a lot of them do that. Well, they'll have an idea for something, they'll get started, and then it'll kind of naturally get to this point where they need to put it down, and, you know, they'll go start on something else or go finish something else, and then they kind of circle back to whatever that original thing was.
For me, a lot of it though is like, when I actually get started on it, like physically making it, I work very quick and kind of get it done all at once.
Okay.
Most of the time, not all the time. I mean, you know, there's things that have to dry and steps you have to take with different materials, but that sometimes, you know, can take a long time between steps. And then things come up obviously in life that you have to put it down for a while. But for me, it's more the conceptualization gets picked up and put down over a long period of time.
Okay.
You know, and then when I actually start working, you know, when I actually start it, I go kind of crazy and like feverishly work at it until it's done, more or less. And then, so it's really like the time I conceptualize it is really where like 90% of the work is. And, you know, and they don't all come to fruition. A lot of times, you know, like I could show you a page out of my sketchbook and you'll see like 8 different sketches of a bag, and only one of them is the one that it looks like the final product came out resembling. The other, there might be like 8 other versions of it on the page, and something about it didn't quite work for me. When you're dealing with shapes, you know, and color and materials, there's really no like rules and things you can stick to in a lot of ways. You know, you kind of have to see what it looks like and what pleases your own eye.
Yeah, that's it. It becomes very personal in that mind, then, right? I would assume.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like it's one of these things that's really hard to explain. You just kind of have to sit down and do it and work on it, and if it makes you happy, I think, it might be good.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, it's really weird. A lot of times, the stuff that I like, that I really, really like that I do, people will like it, but they'll be kind of like, oh yeah, that's nice. They try not to hurt my feelings. They're like, oh, that's really good. They don't want to be like, oh yeah, that's really not your best. But it's like something that I'm like super proud of. And then the thing that I kind of made, like that was kind of like a project that I didn't pay a ton of attention to and just kind of did almost out of the corner of my eye. People go crazy for it. And I'm like, really? That's the one that you went crazy over? Like it's really weird how that works.
Yeah. No, I that happens all the time. And it's so weird. It's something super quick, that you're just kind of getting something out people love. And then the thing you spend, weeks on, they just, it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of like the nature of art. I mean, music is like that. People, what's the most successful music? It's not like the 10-minute long song on an album. It's usually like the 2.5 minute long, really catchy song,
Yeah.
That's just how it is. People they like that, they like, a lot of times if you did something a little more naturally, it's going to look a little bit more natural. That's just how it is.
So when did you get involved with the CLA show then?
I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to say, I think my first show was about 2015. I'm thinking. Okay. I think I've been going for maybe 4 years or 5 years. I'm not really positive. I have to go back and look. But I used to look at the, like I mentioned before, the Contemporary Makers blog. I would look at that all the time, search through it. There's a search field. I always tell people, you can go, there's a search field on it, that software Blogger.
Yeah.
You can type in anyone's name. You could type in any kind of object, any kind of art, and it'll bring up, all their blog entries that have that keyword or have that in the title or even in any of the text. So, I was always looking up artists that I liked or bags that I liked or just different topics. And, eventually I probably made like 4 or 5 bags, maybe 8 or 9, I'm not sure. And I finally emailed one to the blog. And I didn't know who I was emailing. I just sent them a picture of a bag, and it was an email saying, hi, here's some work I did. I don't know if you show new artist work. And it wasn't a bad offering. And they ran with it, and they showed it, and I was pretty blown away by it. I was like, oh my God, my art, somebody likes my bag. It was cool. And I started to do that more and more. And I became friends with the people who run the blog, Art and Jen Reiser,
mm-hmm.
and got to know them really well. They're really dedicated, amazing people with an awesome artistic sense. In fact, I kind of like one of my kind of like a benchmark for me is if I make a bag and Art Reiser like really kind of wants it. If Art is lusting after it, I'm like, all right, I know this is a really good piece of work. It's like, he's like my favorite. If I had to pick like an audience member, I'd be like, like Art really likes it. I know I hit the nail on the head with this one. It was really funny. And like, if he's like, how much is this one? I'm like, well, I know I kind of did that one good. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So they started, posting some of my work, and I was kind of, that gave me a lot of confidence, and, I would bring my work to Dixon's, the Gun Makers Fair, and show some of the artists there, my work. And, a lot of them I had seen their work in the Contemporary Makers blog. So I kind of got my confidence level got a little boost from that. I was like, maybe this stuff is pretty good. These people like it. They have given me positives and constructive criticism, so it's, I can only improve it. And I saw on the blog always, the maker's blog would show pictures from every year's CLA show. And I started to see in the pictures people who were younger at their tables. I was like, oh wow, it's not all people who have been doing this forever, who are retired and have the time for it and are really, super knowledgeable of decades of doing this kind of work. There's younger people there. So I joined the CLA and got a table and had a lot of fun, and it was just, the first year was so much fun. It was so exciting to have a table there and to have a million conversations and to see all the work there that I had seen on the blog all the time. And, see a room full of antique stuff that I don't really get to see a lot. So, that was kind of an experience I really had to repeat every year and get better at every year also.
Wow. That's really neat. I think you speak very highly of Art and Gen Riser, and I think it's really wonderful what they've done for the community. A lot of, when you get back into the 70s and the 80s, and living history and rendezvous is what they were a lot of times called. In that time period, it didn't necessarily focus on the artisans and the craftsmen of what everybody was wearing and doing. And Art and Gen Riser and with the Contemporary Makers blog and then the CLA show I feel they've elevated the status of everybody who makes, like yourself, who makes this premier, nice work. And if anybody listening hasn't been to the show, I mean, what would you describe it as? Because for me, it's a nice intersection between like a gallery showing that you would expect to see, and then, what we all kind of grew up with in the rendezvous and the living history events. But what would you describe that as?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it leans a little bit more toward the art gallery kind of side of it, which is what I kind of was looking for in that, and I appreciated about it. And I would just the fact that it's like kind of an elevation, like you say. It's not a vending kind of thing, and I think that's difficult for some people. Because they kind of do expect to sell things, and make a certain amount of money or at least cover their trip, and that may not always be the case for everyone. But it is more of a kind of like an art setting where you go and if you've ever been to like an art show or even like an art gallery, it's not really like it's not a market. It's more of a meet the artist,
talk about it.
Talk about it, get into discussions about it, physically see things, share ideas, and a big part of it is the kind of the community sense of it.
Yes.
There's you meet up with groups of people every year that you would never, you're all from all over the country. I'm probably one of the few people from New York that actually goes to the show. A lot of people are from the Midwest, from the South. There's people who come as far as Alaska. So these are people that would not see each other all year long. Everybody's kind of talking and, they interact on social media more so, but it's a great opportunity to kind of meet and have a drink or, have lunch, dinner, whatever, and kick around ideas, get, kind of reaffirm your friendships in person. People that you not just their work, but maybe you guys collaborate on work together.
Yes.
Or you really respect each other's work a lot and you talk about it. So, or your work is similar or they know more than you know and there's things you can learn from them. That's kind of a fun thing. And one thing I like about it too is, a friend of mine, Paul Fenewald, who's now he's on the board now. He's been working really hard the last 2 years to bring in new artists. And it's kind of fun for me, because I'm a friend of his. I try to help him with that where I can. I kind of incorporate the things I learned as a new artist there, to help, kind of be there for some of the new artists, tell them what to expect, introduce them to people, help them. A lot of people, how artists are. Artists tend to be very unique people. Some of them are very shy.
Yeah.
So, they might need a hand approaching another artist who might not be the most approachable person in their physical appearance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, all right, listen, this guy's a really nice guy. I'll take you over there and introduce you, and then I walk away. You know what I mean? It's things like that. I kind of enjoy that. Giving them feedback if they ask for it, that kind of stuff. It's kind of fun to be able to play that role now, because that wasn't really in place when I started going. Even just a few years ago, there was no formal mechanism for that. There was no welcoming committee of any kind. You just kind of showed up. Rachel from the CLA might come over and say hello. Maybe you meet Gordon, the president at the time, but you kind of were you kind of had to figure it out yourself. And if you're not willing to approach people, you're going to lose out. So I kind of, I used to go to Dixon's. I mentioned Dixon's. I want to mention them again. That's another fantastic venue for people on the East Coast who like this stuff. I would bring a small shopping bag with some of my work, and I would kind of go up to artists and kind of force them to look at it. And some of them would be very reluctant to provide any kind of criticism, and I would kind of, I'm a New Yorker. I don't really take no for an answer. I'm like, all right, here you go. Tell me what you think. They're kind of like, they're not used. That's a little more forward than some people are used to. But it kind of helped me out a lot.
Yeah.
So I try to encourage that with the newer artists that I meet too. I'm like, all right, there's no reason not to go talk to this guy. He's really nice, and he knows a ton about, let's say, knife making, and you have a conversation with him. That's always like a real pleasure for me to see people, kind of like other people exchange ideas and grow, and because that was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
And it still is fun for me. One of my favorite things to do is collaborate with other artists if possible. It's not always easy to do, but it's a lot of fun. And
I think the CLA environment, both online and physically, really lends itself to that. Young artists it's very easy to be intimidated, especially when you're going into an event of that caliber, like CLA or Dixon's, where there are people that you can follow now and interact with online, but then being in person is a whole nother level. But so many people, no, I'm not going to say all, because there still are people who, might not necessarily be approachable, but it's nice to know there are people like you in the community going around and saying, let's go talk to this person. You want some feedback? This is the person to hear from. They're going to tell you what you need to know and how to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. It is kind of, you do have to keep an open mind. You have to, there's always going to be people who their criticism is not going to be very helpful.
Yeah.
Even if it's legitimate criticism. There's all kinds of personalities. And also among the new artists, I kind of noticed it makes me sound like, a grumpy old man, but because of social media now, you have so much, even in the last 2 years of it, you have so much more access to showing everyone your work. So you might not have made a lot of work, but you're able to get it in front of a lot of people.
Yes.
So you're kind of used to getting positive feedback all the time. You might not used to be getting, you might not have a thick enough skin when you actually get some serious criticism, and you might not know how to process it. So I'm like, I caution people with that. I'm like, look, you might be used to having people, really congratulate your work online. This is amazing done, but don't be hurt if somebody who's been making these for longer than you've been alive tells you that you have to clean up some stuff, or, your stock shaping is shit or something like that. You're going to have to, you're going to have to consider all the things they're saying and determine if it's a legitimate criticism